When Allison pressed her back against the cold stone wall, clutching a bundle that held the only thing worth living for, she didn't expect mercy. She saw the massive dark-furred werewolf stalking forward. She saw the amber eyes of Alpha Gary Davis himself, glowing with a predatory focus that had sentenced countless rogues to death. But when she whispered, throwing her own fragile body over her infant son to take the killing blow, the blow never came. Instead, the most ruthless alpha in the Eastern Territories did something that made his enforcers exchange looks of pure shock. He didn't attack. He shifted back to human form. And what happens next will shatter pack law forever. The rain hammered against the cracked asphalt of the industrial district, carrying with it the scent of oil and impending violence. Allison Powell could no longer feel her fingers. The numbness had started an hour ago, creeping up her wrists like a slow-acting poison. But she forced her legs to move. Sprint, hide, breathe. It was a rhythm of survival. Before we get into the story, take a second to subscribe, like, and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know if this story reaches Canada, the United States, Australia, Africa, or the United Kingdom. Let me know where you're listening from. Now, let's begin. Wrapped tightly against her chest beneath 2 layers of soaked fabric and a stolen jacket was her son. The 6-month-old pup was unnervingly silent. He had cried miles back near the abandoned subway entrance, but now his small body was just a warm weight against her heart. Allison prayed he was only sleeping, lulled by the rhythm of her desperate flight, and not succumbing to the exhaustion that was gnawing at her own edges. Just a little further, baby, she whispered, her voice cracking against the harsh, rain-soaked air. Just across the street. Allison was a rogue in the hierarchy of wolves. She was lower than dirt. But she hadn't always been. Once she had a pack name, a family, a future. All of that had burned the night Victor Kane came. The night she had made a promise to dying packmates that she would keep this child safe, no matter the cost. Allison's lungs burned as she ducked into the shadow of a rusted dumpster, pressing herself flat against the brick wall. Her son stirred against her chest, a tiny whimper escaping his lips. She clamped her hand gently over his mouth, her own breath coming in ragged gasps that fogged in the cold night air. 3 blocks. She'd made it 3 blocks into Davis territory before they caught her scent. The memory flashed unbidden 6 months ago, the Crimson Moon compound engulfed in flames, the screams of her packmates as Kane's mercenaries tore through them like paper. She'd been in the nursery when the attack came, had grabbed the newborn from his cradle and run. His mother's dying words still echoed, "He's the last. Keep him hidden. Keep him alive." She hadn't understood then. Didn't know that the baby she clutched carried alpha bloodline, so pure it made him either a weapon or a corpse in the eyes of wolves like Kane. But she understood now, 6 months of running later, 6 months of stealing food and sleeping in abandoned buildings and watching over her shoulder. And now she'd gambled everything on the one territory Kane wouldn't dare enter. The growl came from her left, low, menacing, unmistakable. Allison's head snapped up to see 4 wolves emerging from the darkness, their eyes reflecting the distant streetlights like copper coins. Enforcers. Davis's personal guard. She ran. Her feet slapped against wet cobblestones as she sprinted down the narrow alley, her son bouncing against her chest, his cries now piercing the night. Behind her, the wolves gave chase, their claws clicking against stone, their snarls echoing off the warehouse walls. The alley dead-ended. Allison skidded to a halt, her back hitting the cold stone wall. The enforcers slowed, forming a semicircle around her, their lips pulled back to reveal teeth designed for killing. One of them, a massive gray wolf with scars across his muzzle, stepped forward, hackles raised. "Please," Allison whispered, her voice breaking. She sank down the wall until she was kneeling, curling her body around her son. "Please, not my son." The gray wolf lunged. Allison squeezed her eyes shut and turned her shoulder to take the bite, to give her baby one more second of life. The impact never came. Instead, a roar split the night, deeper, more primal than anything she'd ever heard. The enforcers scattered backward as if struck by lightning. Allison's eyes flew open to see a new wolf entering the alley, and every cell in her body screamed danger. Alpha Gary Davis in wolf form was a nightmare given flesh. Dark fur rippled over muscle and sinew, amber eyes blazed with an intelligence that was distinctly human and utterly wild. He was easily twice the size of his enforcers, and when he moved, it was with the confidence of something that had never known fear. He stalked toward her, each step deliberate, and Allison knew she was dead. She pulled her son tighter, pressed her lips to his soft hair, and waited. The alpha stopped 3 feet away. His massive head lowered. His nostrils flared as he scented her, scented the baby. And then his wolf form shuddered. His eyes widened. And from deep in his chest came a sound that made the enforcers freeze in shock. Not a growl. A whine. Mine, the wolf's posture seemed to say. Mine. Gary shifted in a blur of motion, standing before her naked and trembling, his amber eyes locked on hers with an intensity that stole her breath. Without a word, he shrugged off the jacket that materialized in an enforcer's outstretched hand and wrapped it around her shoulders. Can you walk? His voice was rough, barely controlled. Allison shook her head, unable to speak. Gary lifted her as though she weighed nothing, cradling both her and her son against his chest. Get the car. Now. The drive to Davis Tower passed in a blur of streetlights and shocked silence. Allison held her son, felt the warmth of the alpha's body beside her, and tried to understand what had just happened. 60 floors above them, Elena Cross stood at the penthouse window, watching the black SUV pull into the underground garage. Her champagne flute paused halfway to her lips. Her perfectly manicured fingers tightened on the stem. She pulled out her phone and began typing. Allison woke to silk sheets and panic. She bolted upright, her hands instinctively reaching for the empty space beside her. Gone. Her son was gone. A scream built in her throat as she threw off the covers, her bare feet hitting marble floors so polished she could see her reflection. Easy, easy. A woman's voice, calm and professional. Your baby is right here. Allison spun to find an older woman in a white coat standing beside a bassinet near the floor-to-ceiling windows. Through the glass, the city sprawled below them like a carpet of lights. They were high. Too high. Where Allison's voice cracked. She stumbled forward, reaching for the bassinet, and the woman stepped aside without protest. Her son slept peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. Someone had changed him, cleaned him, wrapped him in a soft blanket that probably cost more than everything Allison had owned in her life. He's healthy, the woman said. Mild dehydration, some exposure, but nothing serious. You, on the other hand, were hypothermic and hadn't eaten in over 48 hours. Allison's hands shook as she lifted her son, pressing him against her chest, breathing in his scent. Real. Safe. Alive. I'm Dr. Marion Hayes, the pack physician. You're in Davis Tower. Penthouse level. The doctor's eyes were kind but assessing. The Alpha brought you here himself 3 hours ago. The memory crashed back. The alley. The wolves. Gary Davis holding her like she was something precious instead of vermin to be exterminated. Why? Allison whispered. Dr. Marion's expression shifted, something knowing in her gaze. That's a question for the Alpha himself. As if summoned, the door opened. Gary Davis in human form was no less dangerous than his wolf. He filled the doorway, 6'4" of controlled power dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His amber eyes found Allison immediately, and the air in the room seemed to thicken. Leave us, he said quietly, never looking away from her. Dr. Marion nodded and slipped out. The door clicked shut with a finality that made Allison's heart race. Gary moved closer, and every instinct screamed at her to run. But there was nowhere to go. 60 floors of glass and steel between her and the ground, and the most powerful alpha in the Eastern Territories standing between her and the only exit. You need to eat. He gestured to a table laden with food she hadn't noticed before. Fresh fruit, bread, soup still steaming. I need to leave, Allison countered, though her voice lacked conviction. You're not a prisoner. Then why am I here? Gary's jaw tightened. He looked at her son, something almost painful crossing his features. Because my wolf won't let you go. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Allison sank into the chair beside the table, suddenly exhausted. Her son fussed, and without thinking, she began to prepare to feed him. Gary turned his back immediately, giving her privacy, and something about that small gesture cracked through her defenses. She fed her baby in silence while the alpha stood at the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. Crimson Moon, Gary said finally. That's where you're from. Allison's blood turned to ice. How? The scent. It's faint, but it's there. He turned to face her. Victor Kane burned that pack to the ground 6 months ago. Official story was there were no survivors. There weren't, Allison whispered. Except us. Gary's eyes dropped to the baby in her arms. That child. He's not yours. It wasn't a question. He's mine now. Her voice was steel. His mother died putting him in my arms. And Kane is hunting him. That's why you ran. Yes. Gary crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to one knee beside her chair so they were eye level. This close, she could see the gold flecks in his amber irises, could smell cedar and smoke and something wild. I don't know why my wolf claimed you, he said roughly. I don't do this. I don't protect rogues. I don't involve myself in other packs' wars. Every instinct I have tells me to send you away before you bring hell to my doorstep. Allison's throat tightened. Then why am I still here? His hand lifted, hesitated, then gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch sent electricity down her spine. Because apparently, Gary said, his voice barely above a growl, my wolf has other ideas. And right now, it's willing to go to war with every part of me that knows better. He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. You're under my protection. Both of you. For as long as you need it. That's insane, Allison breathed. You don't even know us. Kane will come. He'll burn this place down to get to him. Gary's smile was all teeth. Let him try. 3 days in Davis Tower and Allison still flinched at every sound. Her son had gained weight, his cheeks filling out, his cries stronger. Dr. Marion visited twice daily, pronounced him thriving, and left with a knowing smile that made Allison's stomach twist. She knew what the pack physician saw, what everyone must see. The alphas sent clinging to the blankets he'd personally delivered. The way security nodded respectfully when she passed. The protection that wrapped around them like an invisible shield. It terrified her. Allison spent her waking hours mapping the tower. Stairwells on the east and west sides. Service elevator in the back. Loading dock on sublevel 2. She memorized guard rotations, noted which cameras had blind spots, calculated how long it would take to reach the street. Just in case. On the 3rd afternoon, her son sleeping peacefully in his bassinet, Allison ventured to the 37th floor where Dr. Marion had mentioned a staff lounge with better coffee. She pushed through glass doors into a sleek space of chrome and leather and froze. 5 people in expensive suits turned to stare. At the head of the table sat a woman who looked carved from ice and ambition, platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, slate-gray eyes that assessed Allison like a quarterly earnings report. Well, the woman said, her voice honey over razor wire. The rogue. Allison's hand tightened on the doorframe. I'll come back. No, please. Join us. The woman gestured to an empty chair with manicured fingers. I'm Elena Cross, Chief Operations Officer. We were just discussing the unexpected guests occupying the penthouse. The room's energy shifted. Predatory. Allison recognized the setup too late. She'd walked into an ambush. Gary didn't mention you'd be roaming freely, Elena continued. Tell me, do all refugees from dead packs make themselves so comfortable? Or is it just the ones carrying bastard pups? Something snapped inside Allison. 6 months of running, of fear, of biting her tongue and making herself small. She stepped fully into the room, and though she was smaller than everyone there, though she wore borrowed clothes and had no pack standing, she let the steel show. Say that again, Allison said quietly. About my son. Elena's smile was surgical. I'm simply stating facts. You're a rogue with no pack, no name, no future. That child you're clinging to isn't even yours. And you're what, hoping our alpha will play savior long enough for you to. Enough. Gary's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stood in the doorway, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. His amber eyes were fixed on the security tablet in his hand, footage playing on the screen. Miss Cross. His tone was conversational, which somehow made it worse. You just called my guest a liar, insulted a child under my protection, and implied I'm fool enough to be manipulated. On camera. In my building. Elena's composure cracked. Gary, I didn't mean. You're removed from the Blackwood acquisition, the Singapore expansion, and any project that requires my direct approval. He finally looked up, and his gaze could have melted steel. If I hear you've gone anywhere near my guests again, you'll be removed from the building entirely. You can't be serious. Elena stood, her chair scraping back. Over some rogue? Gary, the board will never. The board answers to me. He crossed to Allison, his presence a wall between her and the room. And I answer to no one. Elena's eyes narrowed. You almost called her Luna. That's what this is. The room went silent. Allison's breath caught. Gary's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, acknowledgement, warning. Meeting's over. Get out. They fled like startled birds. When the door closed, Gary turned to Allison. You shouldn't be down here alone. I can handle myself. I know. Something almost like pride crossed his face. I watched you handle yourself. She outweighs you by 30 pounds and you made her flinch. She insulted my son. And you defended him. Gary's hand lifted, hesitated, then gently touched her cheek. Like a Luna would. Allison's pulse hammered. Don't. Come with me. He pulled away, already walking. There's something you need to know. His private office was all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Gary pulled a file from his desk, laid it open between them. I had Dr. Marion run a bloodline analysis on your son, he said. The Crimson Moon Pack wasn't just any pack, Allison. They were Alpha Heritage. Direct descendants of the first packs. Allison's hands went cold. What are you saying? Gary met her eyes. I'm saying the child you're protecting carries one of the purest alpha bloodlines left in existence. Cain didn't burn Crimson Moon for territory or revenge. He burned it for this. For him. He's just a baby. He's the last Crimson heir. Which makes him either the most valuable prize in the werewolf world, Gary's jaw tightened, or the most dangerous threat to every alpha who seized power in the last decade. Including you. Including me. His honesty was brutal. And now everyone in this building knows you're under my protection. Which means they know he is too. Allison sank into the chair. I've put a target on your back. No. Gary knelt before her, his hands covering hers. You brought me the one thing my wolf has been howling for since the moment I saw you. A mate worth fighting for. A family worth protecting. You don't even know us. His smile was fierce. Then I guess we have time to fix that. The footage hit Wolf Watch at 11 p.m., and by midnight, Allison's world was burning again. She sat on the penthouse floor with her sleeping son, scrolling through her borrowed tablet with numb fingers. The video had been edited with surgical precision, Elena's insults cut away, context stripped, leaving only Allison's aggressive stance and her words, say that again. About my son. The headline read, Rogue threatens Davis Corp executive, Alpha's judgment questioned. The comments were worse. Who does this nobody think she is? Gold digger using a baby to trap an alpha. Tale as old as time. Davis is compromised. Remove him before he destroys everything. That rogue should be executed under territorial law. What happened to our standards? Allison's hands shook. She set down the tablet and pulled her son closer, breathing in his innocent scent. Her phone buzzed. Dr. Marion, don't read the comments. They don't know you. Too late. By dawn, 3 major business partnerships had sent formal letters of concern. The European Pack Alliance threatened to pull their trade agreements. And the board of directors had called an emergency meeting, not to discuss strategy, but to vote on Gary's fitness to lead. No confidence. The corporate version of a challenge for alpha position. Allison found Gary in his office, surrounded by advisors who went silent when she entered. His eyes found hers immediately, and she saw the exhaustion there, the weight of an empire fracturing. Everyone out, he said quietly. When they were alone, Allison forced the words past the lump in her throat. I'm leaving. Tonight. Before the meeting. No. Gary, they're going to remove you. Because of me. Because you protected. I said no. He crossed to her, his hands gripping her shoulders. You think I'll let you run back into the night? Let Cain hunt you down? Let my wolf lose the one thing it's ever claimed as mine. Your pack is more important. You're my pack. The words came out raw, desperate. Don't you understand? 3 days, and I can't breathe when you're not in this building. My wolf paces when you're out of sight. You walk into a room, and everything else disappears. Allison's eyes burned. I'm not worth your empire. Then I'll build a new one. Gary's forehead pressed against hers. You stay. We fight. Together. They'll destroy you. His smile was all teeth. Let them try. The board meeting was scheduled for 8 p.m., televised across all pack networks. Gary's team worked through the day, preparing statements, gathering evidence, building a defense. But Gary had other plans. At 6 p.m., he found Allison in the penthouse. She wore the same borrowed clothes, her son against her chest, looking like exactly what she was, a refugee with nothing. No, Gary said, and gestured to the garment bags his assistant had left. Not tonight. I'm not dressing up for them to tear me apart. You're not dressing up for them. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You're dressing up because in 2 hours, I'm going to stand in front of every major alpha in the Eastern Territories and claim you as mine. And I need them to see what I see. Allison's breath caught. What do you see? A woman who crossed enemy territory alone to protect a child. Who faced down my enforcers without flinching. Who walked into Elena's trap and made her back down with nothing but will. His hand cupped her face. I see my Luna. Whether you accept it or not. The dress was midnight blue, simple and elegant. Dr. Marion helped with her hair while Gary's beta, Marcus, briefed them on the format. The board would present evidence. Gary would defend. Then they'd vote. The key, Marcus said carefully, is to not give them ammunition. Stay calm. Don't engage. Let Gary handle. No. Gary's voice cut through. No more hiding. No more playing by their rules. He looked at Allison, and his eyes blazed. Tonight we don't hide. Tonight we show them what real power looks like. At 7:45, they rode the elevator down to the 42nd floor where the boardroom had been converted into a media circus. Cameras lined the walls. Every seat was filled with pack elite, alphas from neighboring territories, business partners, wolves whose net worth exceeded small countries. Allison held her son, felt Gary's hand at the small of her back, and walked into the light. Elena sat at the front table, flanked by board members whose expressions ranged from hostile to calculating. The chairman, an older alpha named Robert Sterling, called the meeting to order. We're here to address Alpha Davis's recent decisions and their impact on pack security and business interests. Sterling's voice carried across the room. Specifically, the harboring of a rogue Omega and an unidentified child of uncertain origin. Gary's hand tightened on Allison's back. Not pulling her away. Anchoring her beside him. Proceed, Gary said simply. Sterling nodded to Elena. Miss Cross, present your evidence. Elena stood, and her smile was pure poison. With pleasure. Elena's presentation was masterful. She played the edited footage on the massive screen, narrated Allison's aggressive behavior, cited precedent for rogue executions, and finished with financial projections showing the cost of Gary's compromised judgment. 3 partnerships dissolved, 2 pending lawsuits, and a 12% drop in stock value. The Alpha has allowed personal feelings to endanger everything we've built, Elena concluded, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. I fear for our pack's future. I fear for all of us. The room erupted. Board members nodded. Business partners from the European Alliance stood, declaring their contracts void unless the situation is resolved. Chairman Sterling banged his gavel, but the damage was done. Alpha Davis, Sterling said heavily. What do you have to say? Gary stood, and the room quieted. He didn't move to the podium. Didn't acknowledge the cameras. He simply looked at Allison, then back at the board. Everything Ms. Cross said is true. Partnerships are dissolving. Stock is dropping. And yes, I am compromised. Allison's heart sank. Beside her, her son began to fuss. But not, Gary continued, his voice cutting through the murmurs, in the way she suggests. Marcus, if you would. Gary's head of security stood, a tablet in his hands. The footage Ms. Cross presented was edited. Here's the complete version. With audio. The screen flickered. The same conference room appeared, but this time, the sound was crystal clear. Elena's voice dripped with venom. That child you're clinging to isn't even yours. Bastard pups, rogue with no pack, no name, no future. Then Allison's response, quiet and controlled, say that again. About my son. The room went silent. On screen, Elena's cruelty was undeniable. Her calculated performance. The way she'd baited Allison deliberately, viciously. Miss Cross insulted a child, Marcus said flatly. Verbally assaulted a guest under the Alpha's protection. And then edited footage to make herself the victim. Board members exchanged looks. The European Alphas sat back down slowly. Sterling's face had gone pale. Elena. I was protecting this pack. Elena's composure finally cracked. That rogue brings nothing but danger. That child is mine. Gary's voice rang out like a bell. He moved to Allison's side, his hand finding hers. The woman you insulted is my mate. The child you threatened is under my protection. And if anyone in this room has a problem with that, challenge me now. The room exploded into chaos. Cameras flashed. Wolves shot to their feet. But Gary wasn't finished. He turned to Allison, and his amber eyes were blazing. I know you didn't ask for this. I know you came here desperate and afraid, planning to run the moment you were strong enough. But my wolf knew the second I saw you. You're mine. And I'm yours. If you'll have me. Allison's throat closed. Her son squirmed in her arms, reaching out, and his tiny hand grabbed Gary's finger. Held on. The Alpha's expression softened into something that made her chest ache. He seems to think you're worth keeping, Allison whispered. And you? Gary's voice was rough. What do you think? She looked at this Alpha who'd shown mercy when he should have shown teeth. Who'd protected them when every instinct should have told him to run. Who was willing to burn his empire to keep them safe. I think, Allison said, loud enough for the cameras to hear, that my son has excellent judgment. Gary pulled her close, his hand cradling the back of her head, and kissed her like they weren't surrounded by witnesses. Like the world wasn't watching. Like she was the only thing that mattered. When they broke apart, the room was silent. Then Marcus, the beta enforcer who'd nearly killed her in that alley 3 days ago, stood and began to clap. Slowly. Deliberately. One by one, the enforcers rose, the wolves who'd served Gary to their deaths, and joined him. The applause spread like wildfire. Board members. Business partners. Even some of the European Alphas. Sterling banged his gavel, but he was smiling. I believe the vote is unnecessary. all in favor of Alpha Davis maintaining his position. The ayes were unanimous. Elena fled the room. But Gary didn't celebrate. As the crowd pressed forward with congratulations, he pulled Allison and her son close, his voice low in her ear. Elena made 3 calls in the last week, all to the same blocked number. His jaw tightened. She wasn't just trying to remove me. She was feeding information to someone. And I'd bet everything I own that someone is Victor Kane. Allison's blood ran cold. He knows we're here. He's known for days. Which means the lights went out. All of them. Every floor, every backup system, plunging Davis Tower into absolute darkness. And somewhere far below, glass shattered. The panic lasted 3 seconds. Gary's hand found Allison in the darkness, pulling her and the baby against his chest. Around them, the boardroom erupted into chaos, wolves shifting, voices shouting, the scrape of chairs and breaking glass. Marcus. Gary's command cut through the noise. Get everyone to the safe rooms. Now. Alpha. Now. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red. Gary was already moving, Allison tucked against his side as he navigated the corridor with predatory grace. Behind them, Marcus bellowed orders, organizing the evacuation with military precision. They reached the penthouse in 90 seconds. Gary slammed the door, locked it, and immediately went to the windows. 60 floors below, the city blazed with light. Only Davis Tower stood dark. Targeted attack, he said quietly. They cut our independent grid. Allison laid her son in his bassinet, her hands surprisingly steady. 6 months of running had taught her how to function through fear. How long until backup power? Should have been instant. Gary pulled out his phone, swore. Communications are down too. This is coordinated. A distant boom echoed up through the building. Then another. Closer. Parking garage, Gary said, his voice gone cold. They're coming up. He moved to the wall panel, pressed his palm against it. The panel slid away to reveal an arsenal, guns, knives, tactical gear. He began arming himself with efficient, practiced movements. There's a panic room behind the nursery. Reinforced steel, independent air supply, satellite phone. Get in there. Lock it. Don't open it for anyone but me. Allison didn't move. Where are you going? To kill whoever's stupid enough to attack my home. It's Kane. Gary went still. You're sure? Elena's calls. The timing. The coordinated attack. Allison's voice was steady, but her heart hammered. He doesn't take chances. If he's here, he brought an army. Then I'll kill an army. Gary finished loading a tactical vest, turned to face her. Allison, please. Take your son and... No. This isn't a negotiation. You're right. It's not. Allison crossed to the weapons cache, her hands finding a pistol with the ease of muscle memory. She checked the clip, chambered around. I survived Kane once. I know how he fights. I know his patterns. And you're going to need every advantage you can get. Gary grabbed her wrist. You have a child. Which is why I'm not hiding while Kane burns another home around me. She met his eyes, unflinching. I couldn't fight last time. I was weak, untrained, alone. But I learned. 6 months of running, Gary. You think I didn't prepare for this? A crash echoed from somewhere below. Closer now. Voices shouting. Dr. Marion burst through the door, her medical bag in hand. Alpha, they've breached the 30th floor. Enforcers are holding, but... Take the baby, Allison said, already lifting her son from the bassinet. There's a vault in the sub-basement. Access code is her birthday. She looked at Gary. Right? His jaw tightened. How did you? I spent 3 days mapping this building. You think I didn't find your contingencies? She pressed her son into Dr. Marion's arms, kissed his forehead. Keep him safe. Please. Dr. Marion looked to Gary, who nodded once. The doctor fled. Allison turned back to the weapons cache, her hands steady now. She grabbed a tactical knife, strapped it to her thigh. Found a Kevlar vest that was too large, but better than nothing. When she looked up, Gary was watching her with something like awe. "You're terrifying," he said softly. "I'm a mother." She checked her pistol again. What floor will he hit first? Lobby. It's the statement. Show he can walk through my front door. Gary pulled on his own vest. But he'll have teams on multiple floors. Pincer movement. Then we split up. Absolutely not. Another explosion, this one violent enough to shake the floor. The emergency lights flickered. "He's using breaching charges," Allison said. "Military grade. Which means he's not planning to take prisoners." Gary's phone suddenly buzzed, emergency frequency, bouncing off cell towers. Marcus's voice crackled through, "Alpha. Parking garage is gone. They've got the stairwells. Estimate 40 hostiles, heavily armed. We're falling back to the lobby. We need..." The line went dead. Gary's eyes met Allison's. In them, she saw the calculation of a leader weighing impossible odds. Then something else. Acceptance. "Stay behind me," he said. "Watch the flanks. If I go down, you won't. If I go down, you run. Vault. Your son. Survive." Allison gripped his hand. Together. Or not at all. Gary pulled her close, kissed her hard. When they broke apart, his eyes had gone wolf gold. "Let's go to war." The lobby was a war zone. Gary and Allison emerged from the stairwell to find his enforcers bleeding and desperate, holding a defensive line behind overturned furniture and shattered marble. Bodies, both wolf and human, littered the floor. The air reeked of gunpowder and blood. Marcus saw them, and his face flooded with relief. "Alpha. They're regrouping for another." The glass doors exploded inward. Not shattered. Exploded. As if something massive had simply walked through them like they were paper. Smoke billowed into the lobby, and through it came wolves, huge, battle-scarred, moving with military precision. And behind them, walking with the confidence of something that had never known defeat, came Victor Kane. He was bigger than Gary, broader through the shoulders, with silver-shot dark hair and eyes like chips of ice. He wore tactical gear and carried no weapons because he didn't need them. His presence alone was a weapon. "Gary Davis." Kane's voice echoed through the ruined lobby. "I've heard so much about you." Gary stepped forward, putting himself between Kane and Allison. "You're trespassing. I'm collecting what's mine." Kane's eyes slid past Gary, found Allison. His smile was a predator's smile. "Hello, Allison. Miss me?" Allison's finger tightened on her pistol. "Go to hell. I burned your pack to ash." Kane's tone was conversational. "Killed everyone you loved. And you survived by hiding like a rat. Now you've found another alpha to hide behind. How predictable." "Enough." Gary's voice dropped to a growl. "You want them? Go through me." Kane's smile widened. "With pleasure." He shifted mid-stride, a blur of motion too fast to track, and hit Gary like a freight train. They went down in a tangle of fur and fangs, crashing through a support column, shaking the entire building. "Open fire." Marcus screamed. The lobby erupted. Gary's enforcers engaged Kane's mercenaries in brutal close combat while the two alphas tore at each other with savage fury. Gary was fast, tactical, using the terrain. But Kane was experienced, ruthless, fighting like something that had survived 100 battles. Allison moved along the mezzanine, trying to get a clear shot, but they were moving too fast. Below, Marcus went down with a knife in his shoulder. An enforcer she'd seen in the penthouse took a bullet and didn't get up. They were losing. Kane's jaws closed on Gary's throat. Not killing, controlling. He forced Gary back, until they hit another support column. Then Kane shifted, his hand replacing his jaws, lifting Gary off his feet. "You're good," Kane said, blood streaming from a dozen wounds. "But I've been killing alphas since before you were born." Gary's face was turning purple. His hands clawed at Kane's grip, but it was iron. "When you're dead," Kane continued, "I'll take the Omega. I'll take the child. And I'll burn this tower just like I burned Crimson Moon. Something in the rubble moved. Elena, barely conscious, blood matting her platinum hair. She'd been thrown aside like garbage, Kane's promise to her as worthless as Allison had known it would be. Gary's struggles weakened. His eyes found Allison's across the lobby, and in them she saw goodbye. No. Allison's mind raced. Kane's position. The column. The way the building had shaken when they'd crashed through the first support. She looked up at the mezzanine ceiling, saw the maintenance access panel, and suddenly she knew. She ran. Where are you going? One of Kane's mercenaries tried to intercept her. She shot him in the knee without breaking stride, hit the maintenance door with her shoulder, and burst into the service corridor. The emergency axe hung in its case beside the fire extinguisher. Allison smashed the glass, grabbed it, and found what she was looking for: the gas line valve, clearly marked with hazard warnings. Through the wall, she heard Kane's voice. Any last words, Davis? Allison gripped the axe, said a prayer, and swung. The valve ruptured with a hiss. Gas flooded the corridor. She had seconds. She burst back into the lobby, screaming, "Everyone down!" And through the emergency flare she'd grabbed from the wall straight at Kane's feet. The world became fire. The flare hit the gas-soaked marble and ignited with a roar that shook the tower's foundation. Flames erupted in a wall of orange and white, racing along the gas line, consuming everything in their path. Kane's grip on Gary's throat released as the Alpha stumbled backward, his tactical gear catching fire. His mercenaries screamed, diving for cover. The explosion wasn't massive. Allison had controlled it, ruptured only one line, but it was enough. Gary dropped, gasping, clutching his throat. Through the flames and smoke, his eyes found Allison on the mezzanine. She'd thrown herself flat against the floor, the axe still in her hands. Kane recovered fast. Too fast. He shifted mid-burn, his wolf form shaking off the flames, and lunged for Gary with killing intent. But Gary was already moving. He shifted in a blur, his dark wolf meeting Kane's gray, and this time there was no technique. No strategy. Just two alphas fighting for survival in a lobby turned inferno. They crashed through burning furniture, tore at each other with claws designed to kill. Blood mixed with ash, turning the marble floor into a slick battlefield. Kane was bigger. But Gary was younger, faster, and fighting for something Kane had never understood. Gary's jaws found Kane's throat. And didn't let go. Kane's wolf thrashed, desperate now, claws raking deep furrows in Gary's sides. But Gary held on, his teeth sinking deeper, cutting off air, crushing bone. Through the roar of flames and sprinklers finally triggered came Kane's voice, half human, half wolf, gurgling, "The Crimson Moon dies with me." Gary's voice came out as a growl that made the walls shake. "The Crimson Moon rises again." He twisted. Bone cracked. Kane went limp. Gary released the corpse and shifted back to human, naked and bleeding and covered in burns. He swayed, barely standing, and Allison was already running down the mezzanine stairs, sliding through debris to reach him. She caught him as he fell, taking his weight, her hands pressing against the worst wounds. "Stay with me. Gary, stay with me. Surrender." Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. The beta enforcer, bloody but alive, had his gun trained on the remaining mercenaries. "Your alpha is dead. Surrender or die." One by one, Kane's wolves dropped their weapons, raised their hands. The battle was over. The sprinkler system rained down, turning ash to black sludge, extinguishing the flames. Emergency lights flickered back on. And through the smoke and water, Gary started to laugh. It was a broken sound, half sob, all relief. "You blew up my lobby," he rasped. "I saved your life," Allison countered, tears streaming down her face. "With an axe and a gas line." His hand found her face, bloody and shaking. "You're absolutely terrifying." "I'm a mother." A cry echoed from somewhere below, high, piercing, unmistakable. Her son. Safe in the vault with Dr. Marion, probably furious about being woken by explosions. Gary's laugh strengthened. He's got your temper. He's got your lungs. Dr. Marion appeared from the stairwell, the baby screaming in her arms, completely unharmed. She took one look at the destroyed lobby, the bodies, the alpha couple covered in blood and ash, and sighed. I'll get the medical supplies. Allison took her son, pressed him against her chest, and felt Gary's arms wrap around them both. They knelt there in the wreckage, an alpha, an omega, and a baby who had no idea he'd just survived a war, while around them, enforcers secured prisoners and Marcus barked orders into a satellite phone. Sirens wailed outside. Emergency services. Police. And behind them, news vans, their cameras already capturing everything. Gary pressed his forehead against Allison's. The whole world just watched us fight a war in my lobby. Good, Allison whispered. Let them see. Let them know what happens when someone threatens our family. Our family. Gary's voice cracked on the words. Say that again. Our family. She kissed him, tasting blood and smoke and victory. Ours. Through the shattered doors, cameras flashed. The world watched as Alpha Gary Davis, covered in his enemy's blood, claimed his mate and her son in the ruins of his empire. And no one, not the board, not the partnerships, not any alpha in any territory, would ever question his choice again. 6 months later, spring sunshine poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the rebuilt Davis Tower, and Allison still couldn't believe this was her life. The lobby below gleamed with new marble and reinforced steel. The tower had been redesigned from the ground up, stronger security, backup systems that couldn't be compromised, and a state-of-the-art vault that could withstand anything short of a nuclear blast. Insurance had covered most of it. The rest had been paid for by partnerships that returned the moment footage of the battle went viral. Turned out the world loved a good love story. Especially one that ended with an alpha killing his mate's enemy in defense of a child. Elena Cross was serving 15 years for corporate espionage, conspiracy, and accessory to attempted murder. She'd cooperated with authorities, provided evidence on Kane's network, and would likely serve less. But she'd never work in pack business again. Kane's former pack had dissolved within days. Some wolves integrated into Gary's territory. Others took the opportunity to leave pack life entirely, freed from a tyrant's control. The Crimson Moon bloodline, her son's heritage, was no longer a death sentence, but a bridge between old and new. Allison stood in the rooftop garden Gary had built for her, watching her son toddle through cherry blossom petals with the determined waddle of a 1-year-old on a mission. He'd grown so much. Thrived in ways she'd never dared hope for when she was running through rain-soaked streets, praying for one more day. The pack called him Little Alpha with genuine affection. He attended council meetings strapped to Gary's chest. He napped in Marcus's office. Dr. Marion spoiled him with toys from every medical supply run. He had a family, a pack, a future. There you are. Gary's voice came from behind her, warm and familiar. She turned to find him in shirt sleeves, tie loosened, looking like he'd just escaped another board meeting. Which he probably had. Avoiding the quarterly reports? She asked. Delegating. He pulled her close, his hands settling on her waist. There's a difference. Her son spotted Gary and shrieked with delight, abandoning his petal collection to charge forward with outstretched arms. Gary scooped him up, tossed him in the air, caught him with practiced ease while the baby giggled. Higher, her son demanded with all the authority of someone who'd been watching alphas give orders his entire life. Later. I need to talk to your mother first. Gary settled the toddler on his hip and turned those amber eyes on Allison. Dr. Marion called. Said you missed your checkup. Allison's heart skipped. I didn't miss it. I rescheduled. Why? Because I wanted to be sure before I told you. Gary went very still. Sure about what? Allison took his free hand and placed it on her stomach. Sure that we're having another one. The expression that crossed Gary's face was pure joy, unguarded, overwhelming, the kind of happiness that made her chest ache. He pulled her close, careful of the toddler between them, and kissed her like they were alone instead of on a rooftop visible to half the city. Below, on the street, someone must have had a telephoto lens because her phone immediately buzzed with notifications. The pack group chat exploded. Marcus sent a gif of fireworks. Dr. Marion sent 3 heart emojis and a reminder about prenatal vitamins. Her son, squished between them, patted Gary's face. "Baby?" "Yes," Gary said, his voice thick. "You're going to be a big brother." "I teach baby to fight?" "Absolutely not," Allison and Gary said in unison. Cherry blossoms drifted down around them, caught in the spring breeze, painting the rooftop in shades of pink and white. The city sprawled below, alive and thriving. Davis Tower stood tall, a beacon of strength rebuilt from ashes. Allison looked at her family, her son chattering about teaching the baby to be brave like Papa, Gary watching them both with eyes that still glowed gold when he thought she wasn't looking, and felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. Home. Belonging. 6 months ago, she'd been a rogue with nothing but a baby and a prayer, pressed against a cold wall, waiting to die. Now she was Luna of the most powerful pack in the Eastern Territories, carrying the Alpha's child, watching her son grow up safe and loved. "What are you thinking?" Gary asked softly. Allison smiled, leaning into him. "That I should have crossed into your territory months earlier. I would have found you eventually." His hand tightened on hers. "My wolf would have led me to you no matter where you ran. Lucky for us I stopped running. Lucky for us you started fighting." Below them, the city moved on. The pack thrived. And somewhere in the distance, the sun set over the skyline, painting everything gold. The rogue had found her alpha. The alpha had found his heart. And the last crimson moon would rise with the dawn of a new pack, stronger, fiercer, and built on the ashes of everything that tried to destroy them. This was their beginning. And nothing would ever tear it apart again. If you made it this far, you're part of Allison and Gary's pack now. Did their story grip you? Did you feel the tension in that alley, the fire in the lobby, the joy in that rooftop garden? Then don't let this be where it ends. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another story where rogues become queens and alphas learn that love is the ultimate power. Smash the like button if you're Team Allison, the mother who fought back with nothing but an axe and absolute audacity. Drop a comment below and tell me, what was your favorite moment? Was it Gary bowing in the alley? Allison blowing up the lobby? That final kiss in the cherry blossoms? I want to hear what made your heart race. And please, share this story with anyone who loves werewolf romance, found family, and watching the underdog burn down everything that underestimated her. Your support means everything. Every like tells me to write more. Every comment fuels the next story. Every share brings another person into our pack. We're just getting started. Subscribe now and let's see what other rogues are out there waiting for their alpha to bow. The pack grows stronger together. Welcome home.